Hey everyone, Dominic here, bringing you guys another Ravening Report. This time we've got a 4,500 point game, Orcs and Goblins versus the Dread Elves. The game type we played was Counter Thrust with Hold the Ground as a secondary objective. Before we get into this one, I actually kind of remembered to get most of the list, so let's go over what the Dread Elves brought. Really quick, he's got a Dread Prince, Beastmaster, Titanic Might, Ghostly Guard, Beastmaster's Lash, Repeater Crossbow, Heavy Armor, Shield on a Raptor Chariot. I'm not sure what all he had, if that's what it was, but I'm pretty certain that's kind of what his build-out was like. He's got 2 units of 5 Dark Riders with Repeater Crossbows, 2 units of 25 Dread Legionnaires, Champion, Standard Musician, 3 Dread Reapers, 3 Krakens, 2 Raptor Chariots, and finally 10 Dread Knights. Full command there, and the Banner of Blood. Like I said, I'm not too certain exactly if those what he had, but I think that's what it was. For the Orc and Goblins, this is my list, and after playing for a little while, I think this is probably what it's going to be for a while now. If I continue playing Orcs, that is. So we got my Orc Warlord, Iron Orc. He's on his Warboar Chariot, Tuck-Tex Guard, Talisman of Shielding, Lucky Charm, Warcry, Great Weapon, Paired Weapons, Lance, and a Shield. So this guy runs around keeping the army in check with his 1-up armor and 5-up Aegis, res 6, and can deal with a few things here and there. Next up we got the Orc Chief. He's an Iron Orc on a Warboar, Shield Breaker, Dusk Forge, and he is the Battle Standard Bearer. So again, this guy's got a 1-up rerollable. He goes inside the Iron Orcs, and that Shield Breaker can help get rid of any really heavy armor. Next up, we got a Goblin Witch Doctor, Cave Goblin, Wizard Master of Witchcraft, a Goblin Witch Doctor, Cave Goblin, Wizard Adept of Pyromancies, a new edition. We've got 24 Cave Goblins with Nets, Bows, Standard, Musician, 1 Mad Git, and the Banner of the Relentless Company. So I run all those together with the addition of the Adept now. It's a little bit more points than I like to have in one really weak unit, but I definitely like having the additional magic options now too. Next up we got 24 Common Orcs, Musician, Standard, and Bows. 29 Common Orcs, Musician, Standard, Champion, Paired Weapons. 5 Common Orc Boar Riders, Musician, and Shields. And then we got 22 Iron Orcs, Champion, Musician, Standard, Green Tide Banner. We've got 2 Scrap Wagons, 2 units of 3 Grotlings, and 2 Git Launchers with Orc Overseers. So, like I said, I've been playing the list for a little while now. It's been tweaked, as you guys have seen in the last couple of videos, and I think this is kind of how it's going to stick, and this is what I'm going to try and finally get paint onto. So, let's get started in the battle. Here's a quick look at the deployment. So, like I said, we got the Common Orcs with Bows, Cave Goblins with the 2 Casters, Scrap Wagon. The Grotlings aren't there, that's just before scouting. Iron Orcs with the BSB, Git Launcher, General, and I totally forgotten the list. There is a Great Green Idol. Just realizing that now. I'll have to add it in. But there's a Great Green Idol in the list. That's him. 29 Common Orcs with Paired Weapons, the 2nd Git Launcher, the 2nd Scrap Wagon, and we've got those 5 Common Orc Boar Riders. Here's a quick look at the spells. I also had the random move one on the Wizard Master there. Spells got a little bit mixed up. Will o' the Wisp and Bring the Pain was on the Adept. Here's a look at the deployment for Dread Elves. He's got the Dread Legionnaires, 2 of those Dread Reapers, one of the Chariots, 1 of the Krakens, 2 units of Dread, what are those? Dread Riders, the fast cav ones, either way. The other Raptor Chariot, another Kraken, his General on his Raptor Chariot, the other Kraken, Legionnaires, Princes, and finally the last Dread Reaper. My scouts went up here like so. That's the look of the table. And then he also did some Vanguard, and I did a Vanguard as well. Orcs took first turn, and that's kind of how the table looks as we go into Orc and Goblins turn 1. So right off the start, the one of the pump wagons goes up over here. The other one decides to come across the army. And this side shifts while this side is sort of anchoring. Fail march checks on the Grotlings, so they just kind of shift over sideways. They're a little bit of movement. And we go into magic. So we do Cascading Fire on the Dread Legionnaires, kill off a few. We do Raven's Wing on this pump wagon, goes off, and it flies up right beside the Legionnaires out of arc of sight of everything else, forcing them to take some shots at it or suffer some pretty bad consequences there. We go into shooting. One of the Git launchers knocks off 3 of the Dread Raiders. I always forget what they're called now. Dark Raiders? Either way. The other one misfires and can't shoot for this turn or the next. And that's pretty much how the table looks as we go into turn 1 for Dread Elves. So right off the start, he declares a double charge. The Chariot and the Hydra go, or Kraken, sorry, not a Hydra, go right into the pump wagon. And I didn't quite get this lined up right, so it's going to allow that Kraken to overrun, unfortunately. Over here, he moves up the really wounded unit of Raiders to help deal out with that pump wagon just in case. Moves the other unit of Raiders back here to prevent the Grotlings from getting into the bolt thrower. And the center line is just kind of slowly advancing about the speed of the chariots, I guess, kind of keeping that entire line. Does some shooting into the Grotlings, causes a few wounds, shoots off an Orc, and gets rid of the pump wagon. Into more shooting, I guess. More shooting into the Orcs. Knock off a couple more. They pass their panic. And it goes into combat. Takes care of the pump wagon, no problem. The Raptor Chariot just sort of pivots on the spot a little bit. And the Kraken overruns. That's not quite its final position. It is lined up here, nice and square, but overruns into the Orcs. Start of turn 2 for Orc Goblins. The Iron Orcs can still see the rear side of this guy here, so we declare that charge. We go into it. Because of the terrain, I can't quite close the door entirely, so he closes the door to me. And that's looking pretty good because that's going to get that overrun into the Kraken here. The Grotlings move up, continue to be an annoyance. And the rest of my army is slowly moving up here, just not marching, but taking walking shots and things like that. We go into magic. We try to do Cascading Fire on the the Dread Reaper, causes a single wound. And we do Bewitching Glare to get Battle Focus on the Kraken over here fighting the Common Orcs. We also got, I believe we got Twisted Effigy off on one of the bolt throwers as well. It was the furthest one that didn't take a wound, so it can't shoot. We go into shooting. We managed to put the last few wounds on the Dread Reaper, and it causes a panic on the Raiders, and they actually turn tail and flee off the board. Like so. And then we shot at his general with the one Git launcher. Managed to cause a single wound there. We go into combat. I wipe out the chariot, no problem, but I roll like a 3 on the overrun and don't make it into the flank there. So we fight this one here. He knocks off very few wounds, actually. He only killed 4 of me. I did 2 wounds back to him, I think. And I think I actually won that combat. He passes his break check, though. Sticks around. That's what the table looks like as we go into turn 3 already for Dread Elves. So start of turn 3. These guys up here, he declares a charge from the Kraken into the Common Orcs, which fail their terror and they flee. And then he declares a charge from this Raptor Chariot into the rear. They continue to flee, like so. And then he redirects both those charges into the Iron Orcs. So the Chariot's going to be going into the flank, the Kraken's going to be going into the front. Both make it in, and then he continues to speed up the rest of his army now that I'm more or less pinned in place. He continues to shoot at the Grotlings over here, and I'm not sure why he was holding these Dread Legionnaires in reserve, but they didn't really move for the entirety of the game. We go into this combat. Yeah, I think there was shooting. This guy shoots at... I forget what he shot at. Either way, didn't hit. This other bolt thrower can't shoot. And this guy's run out of targets that he can see. These guys shoot, cause some wounds to the Grotlings. We go into combat. The Hydra and the... Sorry, not the Hydra. The Kraken. The Kraken and the Chariot do a bunch of wounds. I think I went with great weapons and managed to kill the... I can't remember if I went with great weapons or paired weapons. Either way, no, I went with paired weapons. Paired weapons and managed to just barely kill the Kraken. He did win, but I'm stubborn. Turn around to face like so. We go over here. He kind of whiffs again. I think he killed another 4 guys off. I did another wound to him. We pass our check and we're sticking around. And that's what the table looks like as we go into turn 3 for Orcs and Goblins. So the start of this turn, I actually declare the War Cry. And the General is going into the Dread Legionnaires that you can see over here, as are the Orcs with bows. They're both going into the front. So we declare that charge. Unfortunately, the General makes it. He only needed a 6. Because he's buffed with the magic plus the War Cry +1, so yeah, happens. But the bow orcs make it in. These guys rally, and I turned them this way originally, and I decided that there's nothing that they're going to do, so they actually turn back around facing the same way, and they're just going to go hide behind this rock to preserve points. So I did that. The Grotlings are, again, just being a nuisance. Going to Magic Phase. We get Twisted Effigy off on his Bolt Thrower again. And not sure where we did wounds. I think that was pretty much it for Magic that went off this turn. Did some shooting. The Common, or the Cave Goblins, caused a wound. We try and do shooting at the Kraken with the Git Launchers, and that fails. And we go into combat. This turn he finally beats up on me pretty bad. I'd failed to do anything with him. I still have an extra rank though, so I stick around on Steadfast. And over here we kill that chariot and just pivot on the spot. It is worth noting that I've got the secondary pretty secured because he's got no scoring units. So over here he kills the back rank of the archers, but we kill a bunch of him. He's down by I think 4, fails his break check, flees off the table. He's already putting the casualties back on the tray there. We just pivot to face the bolt thrower there. And that's what the table looks like. So we're going into turn 4 for Dread Elves. So over here, he's finally had enough of these damn Grotlings. He charges into them. Over here, he was thinking about charging in, but it was a pretty far charge. So instead of doing that, he kind of reforms his lines a little bit to try and create this easy enough charge for him. A little bit hard charge for me, especially since I don't have the War Cry anymore. And he goes into shooting. The bolt thrower takes a shot at my general who's out there in the middle of nowhere. Luckily, he misses. Over here, he goes into combat, kills off the Grotlings, no problem, and just pivots on the spot to face the next unit. Again, goes to town on the common orcs. This time I flee, and he does catch me. So we're sitting out there. And that's what the table is going to look like as we go into turn 4 for Orc and Goblins. So I didn't declare any charges. Everything was, like I said, it was pretty far charges over here, so we just decided to hold back. What I ended up doing here, the first thing, to start, I measured the Arcosite, and he was just barely within. So instead of feeding him those points, I shift over 3 inches, or 4 inches, or whatever it is. And the rest of the army kind of makes way, gets back into a new line over here. These orcs head behind this rock for complete cover, and this guy comes up between here facing this side in case he decides to go this way. So there's that. We go into magic phase, and the only thing we got off on magic was Raven's Wing. We moved the Iron Orcs even further sideways just to make his charges further than he had set up originally. We go into shooting. Both the Cave Goblins and the Bow Orcs managed to kill off the other Dread, or the Bolt Thrower. And the Git Launcher that didn't move, as you see in this next picture, had a nice arc of sight here right to these Dread Elves, or these Raiders. Hits, causes a bunch of wounds. He passes his panic check, but now he's not in such good shape to deal with those Grotlings. That's what the table looks like as we go into turn 5 for Dread Elves. So we started the turn, he declares a charge from his general into my general. He fails it, and again, he kind of moves up. Over here, he decides to just avoid the Git launchers altogether. He's within 12 inches of both of them where he is, so it's not like I can really shoot at him with that. And he's just trying to set up a turn 6 problem for me. Takes another shot from the bolt thrower into my general. This time he hits, he wounds, and I pass my Aegis save. So I was really lucky. And I forgot. He did charge that last guy into the Grotlings. Caused some wounds. I managed to kill him though. And that's turn 5 now for Orc and Goblins. So started the turn. My general goes into his general. The Iron Orcs go into the Kraken over here. The Grotlings go into the Bolt Thrower. They make it, as do the Orcs, as does my general. And this is the point here where I was kind of snickering because I knew I had a good insurance policy, especially since this guy was very wounded. You just see in a second. Move up. The rest of the army kind of shifts around. Table looks like that. We go into magic. We try and kill this thing off with cascading fire. He let it go off. I think I caused a single wound to it. And he wasn't in arc of sight since this one's just a hex. So I did the blaze that these guys didn't cause anything. We get Bring the Pain off against his general for reroll fail to hits. And we go into shooting. So my insurance policy was at Mad Get. I launch it out at him, and he falls just shy. I think I only rolled 4 inches. But it's not actually that bad, because with the 4 inches, it put him actually right out in front. So now this guy can't actually charge anything without making contact with that guy. So I like that setup pretty good. We go into combat. The Iron Orcs kill off the Kraken, not a problem. Pivot to face the Dread Knights, and we go into the general fight. I thought I was going to run through this guy like butter. He made a lot of 6-up armor saves, which was really surprising, and he's alive with 1 wound, passes a break check. And that's what the table looks like as we go into turn 6 for Dread Elves. I think he could have got quite a bit more points here if he had done something a little bit different. Basically, he declares a charge from the Knights into the Iron Orcs, which I think if he would have went into the Great Green Idol, I think these guys would have just ran through it and would have been able to overrun into the Cave Goblins, which I wouldn't have been able to do anything about. So I would have lost them on my turn 6. But nonetheless, he goes over here, charges in that. Again, here he was not sure what to do, decides to declare a charge over here. The Kraken dies as a result from stepping on that Mad Git. Really, it's his turn 6. On my turn 6, I don't really have anything that I'm going to hit him with since he is within 12 of all my ranged stuff. And if he just moved on this side of the impassable terrain, he would have preserved those points. But he doesn't. The Kraken dies, Mad Git dies. And that's what the table looks like. We go into combat. We continue to fight away over here. It's kind of a slap fest, but I am slowly taking wounds. Over here, he doesn't kill off all the orcs, and I whiff hard. This guy's got like AP 8, and he only managed to do 1 wound, and that was it. We are stubborn, so we stick around. And my general puts he grabs a great weapon to make sure that his general dies, and the boars killed the chariot. So I did take a wound this time, though, on my lord. That's what the table looks like as we go into final turn 6 for Orc Goblins. We just close in on these princes. Not much else need for moving. We go into magic. We get both Battle Focus, Bewitching Glare on, and Bring the Pain off on those knights. And he didn't remove these casualties. The impact hits kill off the back 4, which was rather surprising. And he only manages to put 2 wounds onto the Iron Orcs. And then my general goes and he kills the remaining 5 by himself. This fight continues on. Neither of us died there. But that's pretty much the end of the game. That's where we call it. So, really fun game. Ended up in a big old 20-0 victory for the Orc and Goblins. Like I said, I like how this list has been operating. I know it's probably not the most competitive of things that's out there, but it's always about something that's fun and enjoyable to play too. So, hope you guys enjoyed the battle report. Stay tuned for the next one.